Okay, secondary video on upgrading the two-wheel drive uh, stadium truck, short course truck, whatever it may be. Um, I threw together some numbers real quick. Um, say you upgraded all the way up to the VXL Rustler, and you've been running 3-cell lipo, and it just doesn't seem fast enough, doesn't seem powerful enough. These are just numbers I've thrown together. They're only on kV of the motor and the battery voltage. They're not actual RPM numbers that I got off of any motor scanner tool or anything like that. All I did was take the kV. kV on a motor is how many RPMs for every 1 volt that motor will spin freely. That's no load. So say you got the VXL Rustler. The VXL Rustler on 2-cell lipo will spin about 25,900 RPM. That's what the motor will spin at the shaft with no load on it. When you upgrade to 3-cell, it goes up to 38,850. If those numbers aren't big enough for you, there are other companies that make higher kV motors. What you have to watch out for when you go to a higher kV motor is that you're going to put more stress on the motor to spin up off the line. So you have to have better batteries to support a bigger kV motor. After you get to a certain point, if you stay in the low range kV motors, they're all going to pull about the same amp draw to fire up when you're going brushless, non-sensored motor. So here are some other numbers I just threw together. These are all Castle Sidewinder numbers, just because that's the numbers I had in front of me. If you want to use a different motor, you can also use the same formula. You take the kV of the motor, say it be like 3800 kV, multiply that times the voltage of the battery, which is 7.4 volts on 2-cell or 11.1 volts on 3-cell. On a 3800 kV motor, you're going to run about 28,120 RPM at the rotor. When you step to 3-cell, you're going to be up at 42,180 RPMs at the rotor. So if you step up 300 kV on the motor, you're going to gain about 3,000 kV, or about 2,000 kV at the rotor. So when you step up to 4,600 kV, running that same 2-cell, you're going to be up at 34,040 RPM at the rotor. When you step that up to 3-cell, you're going to be up to 51,000. So a 4,600 running 2 cells is going to run 40 or 34,000, and the Valenion on 3 cells is running 38,000. So you're almost running as much RPM at the rotor on 2 cells if you go to 4,600 than you did with your Valenion on 3. That 4,600 on 3 cells is going to run 51,060 RPMs at the rotor. So you've gained, roughly 14,000 RPM at the rotor just to go to 4,600 kV. So, when you want to go faster, and you've gotten to the 3-cell, there's actually another way to do it. You can just put more cells to that motor, buy a different ESC. You could buy like the Castle Mamba Pro, Mamba Max Pro, and run bigger cell count. But Traxxas is not going to warranty your motor if you do that. You'll end up spinning your rotor too fast, and there's damage to the rotor. Then say, Castle recommends you can go all the way up to 5,700 kV in a Rustler. 5,700 kV in a Rustler. Just 5,700 kV on 2 cells is going to spin about 42,000 RPM compared to the Valenion's 38,000 on 3 cell. So you're going to be putting a lot more RPM out at the rotor. So you can fine tune that with gearing. But you're going to see a dramatic increase in power stepping from the Valenion's 3,500 kV to the Castle's 5,700 kV. And the Castle motor is a 4-pole motor. The old Valenion motors, I've heard stories that Valenions went to 4-pole. I just checked Traxxas' website and can't find that to be a fact. But you're going to gain more torque because you're using a 4-pole motor. And so you're going to spend, almost 4,000 RPM more on 2 cells than you would on 3 cells if you're spinning a Valenion. And then if you decide to take the 5,700 to 3 cells, you're going to be up at 62,000 RPM or 63,000 RPM at the rotor. So, you're going to be able to hit speeds that you didn't know were possible with the Valenion system. Because you're going to spend almost double, close to double the RPM at the rotor. So you don't need those crazy gears. But once you get to 5,700, you're going to start seeing heating issues if you don't have the truck geared right. Castle has a gearing chart on their website that has recommended gearing. If you're going to be doing everyday play, I would suggest going to the low side of the gearing chart. And then keep an eye on your motor the first couple of times you run it and make sure you're not getting over temped. But if we're looking for top speed and power, those are some of the numbers. Like I said, I used Castle's SV3 system as a reference point, but there are many other motor companies out there. Just use the standard formula, kV, multiplied by the voltage of the battery that's in your truck. That will give you a ballpark range of how much it's going to spin at the rotor. And the second thing you need to look at is, are you running a 2-pole motor or a 4-pole motor? 4-pole motors run better torque than 2-pole motors generally. So you want to look at those factors when you think about upgrading your motor. If you're already at brushless, if you already have 2 cells, or if you already have 3 cells, you're going to see dramatic increases in power, torque, and RPM, depending on where your kV rating is in your motor. Like I said, the higher the kV the motor is, the harder it is on your battery to spin up. Because the motor's gonna ask for a lot of amperage to get those first revolutions in. It's like having a mountain bike and you use a really high gear, really hard to pedal gear in. That's what it's like taking off for that motor every time you take off. So you bring down that kV, it brings down that gear. You know, it's like bringing down the gear on a mountain bike. It gets easier and easier to spin. So you use one of these lower kV motors like the 3800 and you put more voltage to it, you're going to get lower heat issues because you're going to pull less amperage, and you're going to, by putting more voltage to it, you're going to have the RPM at the rotor. The higher you get into the kV, the more stress you're going to put on the motor and the batteries and the ESC to get those, you know, because you're going to be pulling so much higher amperage. So be careful. Pay attention to your motor temps when you put a new motor or new gearing system in your car, and have fun in the hobby. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, post below, and I'll try to get back to you.